Hey everybody, Super
Notification
Blind
volume
Man
set to
here.
0%.
How's it going?
Accessibility volume set to 20%.
Okay, looks like I turned that down, I think enough anyway. I wanted to do a brief video real quickly. And I wanted to do this video to clear something up. I was looking at my videos and I'm like, oh, well, I didn't really put that the way I should have put it. So anyway, in my Triton reference video, I was talking about how I had difficulty figuring the balance out with the bass. And really, it wasn't that I was having trouble with the bass as much as it was just balancing out the LFE output from my receiver with the mid-bass output from the speakers. What I mean to say by that is that obviously if the towers are plugged in and on, right, and there's my towers over there, so sorry, my table might be a mess, but no, well, like I said, I'm a bachelor, give me a break. So anyway, so like I said, if your towers are plugged in, and this is, you know, largely for education, edification, if you're wanting to get these set up and installed, I figure maybe it would kind of just help you to know this information. When they're on, they're obviously supplying the bottom end of bass for your speaker. That's why I mentioned that they're not just a subwoofer, they are actually a woofer section as well. So they're not just providing sub bass. Largely, they're not providing sub bass. They're actually providing bass to your speakers, and that's how they were designed primarily. But they do obviously do sub frequencies as well, and they do them extremely well by design. So they are designed as a mid-bass subwoofer driver section, and that's great. I just wanted to point something out, that's what I meant, was the balance between those. And let me clarify. Obviously on the back of these speakers is a volume knob that will control the total volume of the bass coming out of the speakers. That obviously controls the total volume of the mid-bass and the LFE. So I had to find the right balance for the mid-bass first, and that's obviously what I would recommend, is that you give it a listen, and if it sounds a bit boomy, or, you know, just there's too much, well, for some of you, there will never be enough SPL. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that obviously you don't want frumpy and exaggerated bass in the mid-bass, right? So you don't want voices just, you know, it's not accurate, right? I don't be inaccurate about it. Make sure you find the right balance, which for me in this room was somewhere in the neighborhood, like I said, between about a quarter and a third of the way up. And what I found is when I ran the Odyssey EQ is that Odyssey EQ way misinterpreted the delay time of one of the speakers. So when I listened to it, the one was set at like 37 milliseconds, and it was causing a really strange cross oscillation. And I thought, man, I'd better clear up what I meant, what I'm saying. So it was causing a severe cross oscillation, and it sounded really odd. It was just like, and I'm going, what in the hell is going on? So I looked in there, and I'm looking at this millisecond delay going, what? Like, why would it be that far out? So I adjusted it to about around the same distance as I was getting from the other speaker, and I kept adjusting until I reached 25 milliseconds. Now I noticed that if I did it differently on either one, it just didn't sound correct. So I kept it at 25 for each speaker. So I found 25 milliseconds to be absolutely perfect LFE delay time for these speakers. I don't know why. I don't know if there's a particular reason for that. I'm sure it's just the way that the DSP balances the delay time from the LFE input to match it up with the mid bass that normally comes through your jack on the back, your high level speaker jack. So that was interesting, but I thought, man, I'd better point that out because I wanted all of you to understand it wasn't anything wrong with the speakers at all. It just was actually the receiver doing everything wrong. So I had to look at that and go, okay, and do some real close listening. And I used a lot of test tone tracks that I know very well, and I plugged in some media, so I mixed it up a little bit and really got investigating and found out that that was just perfect. 25 milliseconds was perfect delay time for these, and I don't understand exactly why that is. I'm not the engineer at Golden Air Tech, but I'm imagining it is because of the DSP inside that controls the balance between the LFE input and the already existing mid-bass input that comes from the speaker wires that you connect in the back of the speaker. So that was something I thought I would point out there, that was pretty strange. I went, oh man, that's weird. So also I wanted to point out something about my powerplant Premier that I did a review on just a second ago, actually, and point out that I forgot to mention that it does make a little bit of noise when it gets heated up. So it will come on. It has a fan, and for the large part, this is a very quiet piece of equipment. Actually, it's really not that bad. However, I do a lot of really honestly low volume listening. I don't listen to things very loud, and so I kind of at times will find it distracting. It's not that bad, but I just figured I'd point that out, that if you want to install and you have a space perhaps to plug that in behind a wall and not have to listen to it, that might actually be your best bet. Though then again, I know a lot of you who are doing big theater installations. I live in an apartment, guys, so obviously that's not a huge big deal to me, right? So, but if if you're doing a big home theater room, it is extremely likely you've got a projector, and a projector is going to make noise just like that anyway. I've had a projector before, and I know they make noise. So there's probably a lot of equipment making noise in your theater room. So I understand that, just like my cooler that finally turned off. Anyway, so there are actually times I have to turn that off too because I'm sick and tired of hearing it. But either way, I just thought I would point those things out and say, hey, I saw this video and I just went, oh boy, I better say something about that, because it was bugging me that I didn't clarify what I meant by that. So, but you know what? What's so strange is that the LFE output from my receiver, I've tried to turn it up, but every time I do, I find out that it just does not balance, because it's distorted when I turn it up too far. And actually what's funny is Odyssey pointed out that it was pretty high volume and said right off, hey, this isn't going to work for calibration. You've got to turn that down. And I had to skip that part in Odyssey EQ. And what I found is that these are so powerful that if I turn them up past negative 12 dB, they don't sound right in this room. They don't balance out evenly. They're too, they're just too much. They're too boomy. They're especially just not balanced, is what I mean to say by that. So I thought that was a funny thing to point out, that living in this apartment, which is the biggest apartment I've ever lived in, let's put it that way. So that's nice. But to be honest with you, I was rather surprised at the sheer the sheer way that was, working out. I thought, oh, that is funny that it's just too much for this apartment. It really is. It's way too much for this amount of space, just too much SPL, or I should say, too much unbalance with these speakers. Could I hook up a sub, another sub and get more? No, I really don't think so. Not unless I put it in the back of the room or something, because it really is just too much. It's not right. It doesn't sound balanced in here. So it just sounds like too much. But I can tell you, the bass is satisfying from these puppies, man. Oh, I'm telling you what. Especially since I hooked up that powerplant Premier, I am telling you right now, the power from these towers increased dramatically. And that was another thing I really wanted to point out, but I forgot, is that, as I mentioned, obviously, the more things that you plug into a plug strip, basically, the more that you are sharing amps, right? So you're no longer having enough amps for everything to perform at its maximum point of capability, really. Well, and even then, I mean, you could get bigger, fatter power supply cables, and I bet $10 these would really rock and roll. But there just isn't a point. The point that I'm getting at, however, is that if you take these and you plug them into something like that, the bass increased actually dramatically. And that was great. Not the volume of bass, but the dynamics of bass. So I was really shocked with that. Obviously, the just sheer, pound and the feeling in your chest and in this room is dramatic. Now that I plugged those in to that unit, it really increases dynamic range, and I love it. I love that feeling of a bass guitar sounding like a bass guitar. I love that feeling of an upright bass guitar sounding like an upright bass. I love the feeling of toms being struck and the ripples that come off of that. The acoustic information that you hear in a big studio or a live performance is dramatic, and it really shines from this system now that I've hooked that up. So I just wanted to throw that out there and correct myself there. So thank you.
Stop recording button. Home button. Stop recording button.